Dear students, welcome to SYBSC academic year 2020-21. This year we are going to study three papers in first semester. Paper 1, Zoology paper 1 with section 1, namely Animal Diversity third, and the course code is ZO231. Zoology paper 2nd, that is Applied Zoology with section 1st, namely Applied Zoology 1, and the course code is ZO232. Zoology paper 3rd is the practical paper with section 1st, Zoology practical paper. Course code is ZO233. So in semester 3 of the SYBSC, we are going to study 2 theory courses and 1 practical course, having the weightage of 50 marks, and there will be 15 marks internal exam or internal assessment, and the external exam or the term end exam will have weightage of 35 marks. So totally each of the course having weightage of 50 marks for the theory as well as the practical courses. So we are going to discuss about the syllabus for the Zoology paper 2nd, section 1st. The course title is Zoology paper 1 and the course code is Zoology, that is ZO232. This course having the weightage of 2 credits, that is 30 lectures, and it has 2 chapters or topics, that is sericulture and agricultural pest and their control. So today we'll discuss about the syllabus of this course. So chapter 1, sericulture. Sericulture is the branch of applied zoology and it deals with the scientific culturing and rearing of the silk moths for the purpose of production of raw silk. So this topic having subtopics. So first subtopic is an introduction to sericulture. So we are going to study the definition and the importance and the scope of sericulture together with the study of different type of silk moths. So in India there are 4 kind of silk moths which are cultured or grown for the purpose of sericulture, and these are the mulberry silk moth, tussar silk moth, muga silk moth, and the Erie silk moth. So these are the 4 type of silk moths usually cultured or grown for the sericultural practice in India. So we are going to study these 4 type of silk moths in this topic. Then we are also going to study their distribution, taxonomic position, and the varieties of the silk produced in India. So these 4 type of silk moths having several species and which are adopted for the Indian agroclimatic conditions that are grown for the purpose of sericulture, and these are mulberry silk moths, tussar silk moth, Erie silk moth, and the Muga silk moth. So in this subtopic, we are going to study the different species of the silk moths and the type of silk moths with respect to sericulture, uh, grown in India. Then second subtopic is external morphology and life cycle of Bombyx mori. So external morphology or morphological characters, then life cycle of the Bombyx mori. Bombyx mori is the mulberry silk moth. It is commonly called as mulberry silk moth because of its feeding on the mulberry leaves. So, Bombyx mori or the silk moth Bombyx mori is a popular and widely accepted, widely grown silk moth species in India as well as as well as abroad. So, Bombyx mori is the insect silk moth type of silk moth contributes 90% of the silk production of India and the world, and that's why this topic in this topic we are going to study the life cycle of the Bombyx mori. So whatever the information or the topics that are related with the study of Bombyx mori only. So next topic is cultivation of mulberry, that is the food plant, which is essential for the feeding of silkworms or the caterpillars of the Bombyx mori. And since the mulberry is the unique feed of the silkworms or the caterpillars of the Bombyx mori, that's why it needs the large quantity of mulberry leaves or the mulberry crop or mulberry garden for the continuous feeding of the caterpillars of the silk moth Bombyx mori. So it is the initial and the important step for the practice of mulberry sericulture. So this topic includes different varieties of the mulberry crop or mulberry plant for the cultivation. So there are several varieties of the mulberry, indigenous as well as improved varieties, and these improved varieties can provide the large quantity of mulberry leaves and having good quality of the mulberry leaves. So improved varieties of the mulberry, they can provide the large quantity or larger yield of the mulberry leaves. So usually there are different type of improved varieties which are recommended for the different states in the country. Then another point with respect to mulberry cultivation is rain-fed and irrigated mulberry cultivation. So we can plant or cultivate the mulberry crop in the field in two different regions, that is rain-fed uh, region and the irrigated regions. So we'll have to use the different methods for the cultivation of rain-fed mulberry and the irrigated mulberry with respect to uh, distance between the plants or distance between the rows of the plants, then fertilizer schedule, pruning methods, and the leaf yield. So these are the different aspects which we'll have to follow while cultivation of mulberry in the rain-fed region and the irrigated regions uh, for the cultivation of mulberry. The next point in cultivation of mulberry is harvesting of mulberry. So there are various methods or modes used for the collection or cutting of the mulberry leaves, harvesting of the mulberry leaves, and they are leaf plucking method, branch cutting method and whole shooting method, whole shoot cutting method. So leaf plucking method means where the leaves of the mulberry plant are simply plucked by using fingers, either fingers or a leaf plucker. So there are various method of leaf plucking. Then branch cutting method where we cut the branch of the plant from the base. And whole shoot cutting method means the entire shoot or the entire plant can be cut from the base of the plant. So these are the three methods of the harvesting of mulberry, and which are having some advantages and disadvantages also. So if we are going to adopt leaf plucking method, this will require more labor or more manpower for harvesting leaves. But we can uh, cut or pluck, or we can collect, or we can harvest the selective type of mulberry leaves in leaf plucking method. In branch cutting method, the manpower or the labor will be required less, but this where we can use the entire plant, we can cut entire plant, and no material for planting will remain due to branch cutting or harvesting method. So these are the some of the advantages or disadvantages while harvesting mulberry. So cultivation of mulberry and silkworm rearing, these are the two agricultural part of the sericulture. So first part of the sericulture, that is agricultural part, which includes the two steps. The first step is cultivation of mulberry and second step is silkworm rearing. So the topic, uh, subtopic 1.5, that is silkworm rearing, where the caterpillars or the larvae or the silkworms of the silk moth Bombyx mori are cultured or grown in the rearing house. So silkworm rearing is the second step, important step of the culturing of silkworm larvae in the rearing house. So this subtopic 1.5 having several steps again. First one is, or first point is, varieties for rearing. So there are again three varieties of the mulberry silk moth, that is univoltine, bivoltine and multivoltine. So univoltine varieties of the silk moth Bombyx mori, they undergoes only one generation in a year, and hence the cocoons from such variety can be harvested only once in a year. So this is a monocrop variety, means where we can get only cocoons only once in a year. Then another strain or varieties, they are bivoltine, and these varieties can undergo their reproduction, or they can undergo two generations in a year. So the cocoons of the mulberry silk moth can be harvested twice in a year. So these are bivoltine varieties. And third varieties of the silk moth Bombyx mori is multivoltine. So this type of silk moth, multivoltine type of silk moth, they undergoes several generation, or they produce the cocoons several times in a year. Two to seven, usually 2 to 7 number of generations can occur in a year, and each of the generation takes about 2 months for their complete growth and harvesting of mulberry cocoons, harvesting of the cocoons in a 2 month. So so obviously we can take minimum of 6 generation and we can harvest cocoons 6 times in a year minimum. And if there is a proper planning or management is uh, uh, very good or at scientific level, then we can take 7 crops also. So multi-volatile strains or the varieties can be grown, or the sericultural practice of the multi-volatile varieties can be continued throughout the year, and sericultural practice uh, can be continued for through complete year, and we can obtain the cocoons 2 to 7 times. So multi-volatile varieties, bivolatile varieties or univolatile varieties, this can be grown or cultured in India in a different regions as per the climatic conditions, weather conditions uh, present in the different regions or the different states of the country. For example, univolatile varieties which can give only one crop or undergoing only one generation can be grown in the regions like Jammu and Kashmir, where the climate is too cold, or in a cold conditions of the Jammu and Kashmir, there is only one generation or only one uh, generation, or we can continue the sericultural practice only once in a year in a Jammu and Kashmir. Then just towards the south, like West Bengal, Orissa, Assam, where the climatic conditions are different, and thus in these regions bivolatile strains of the mulberry silk moth can be grown, and the crop, that is cocoon, can be harvested twice in a year. And the regions like the Karnataka, Maharashtra towards the south of India, the climate is somewhat warm or hot, and that's why the sericultural practice can be continued throughout the year, and the mulberry silk moth varieties or the strains can be grown that are multi-volatile strains. So multi-volatile strains or these regions are also called as univolatile states, bivolatile states, or the multi-volatile states due to the culturing of the respective type of strains or varieties in the regions. So there are different varieties of silk moth uh, in the Bombyx mori and are selected uh, usually in the respective regions or the as per the agroclimatic conditions. Then second requirement of the silkworm rearing is rearing house. So rearing house, the that can be constructed in the field or in the mulberry garden, or as per the convenience of the sericulturist or the farmer. So rearing house is also the important requirement of the sericulture, and that can satisfy all the requirements, optimum requirements of the uh, silkworm larvae with respect to temperature, humidity, ventilation, uh, etc. Then rearing techniques. Next point is rearing technique. So there are various methods of rearing uh, of the silkworm Bombyx mori, and these are either self method, floor method, or the bed methods. So sericultural practice can be done in a different by different methods, that is self method, floor method, and silkworms can also be grown directly onto the ground on the mats. Simply the mulberry leaves can be spread on the mat on the ground, and caterpillars of the Bombyx muri can be fed directly onto the ground, but this requires more space. In rearing house, we can use the shelf, and we can keep the rearing trays in the shelf. So in a little space also we can provide uh, the accommodation for the growing larvae in a rearing house. Then important diseases and the pest. The next point is important diseases and the pest. The silk moth Bombyx mori and silkworm larvae or caterpillars of the Bombyx mori are domesticated type of insect. They are completely domesticated, and that's why they are very sensitive to the environmental factors, unfavorable situation of the condition of the unfavorable factors like temperature or humidity, and that's why it is essential to uh, manage the or control the different type of diseases and the pest. So there are different type of microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, or protozoans attacking the silkworm larvae in the rearing house and can cause different diseases. So ultimately, reducing the number or the strength of the larvae and can also affect their health. So this will uh, affect badly with the quality and quantity of the cocoons produced, and that's why it is essential to uh, control or manage the normal health, normal conditions in the rearing house, optimum conditions in the rearing house, or disease-free conditions in the rearing house, so as to get, so as to attain the normal growth of the silkworm larvae in the rearing house. So there are different type of diseases like pebrine or protozoan disease, muscardine, fungal disease, bacterial disease, viral disease or bacterial and viral flacheri. So there are different type of diseases occurring in the silkworm larvae and are caused due to different type of infections like protozoans, fungus, bacteria or viruses, and hence, it is essential to uh, control these diseases whenever there are infections in the larvae or in the rearing house. There are certain pests also. There are some destructive organisms like dermestid beetles or the Uji fly, which are the pest of the cocoons. So they are also attacking uh, in on the cocoons and damaging cocoons and causing the loss of the cocoons. They can feed or breed onto the cocoons and larvae, and thus ultimately causing loss of larvae and loss of cocoons in the sericulture. So it is essential to study these diseases and the pest so as to control them whenever they occur in the rearing house. The next point is preparation of cocoons for marketing. So after about a month of larval development or silkworm rearing in the rearing house, the larvae spin the cocoon so as to undergo the pupation, which is the next phase of their life cycle. And at this stage, the sericulturist or farmer have to harvest or collect the cocoons and have to separate or sort the cocoons so as to uh, sort or separate the good quality cocoon, poor quality cocoon, cut cocoon, double cocoon, pierced cocoons, flimsy cocoons. So there are different type of cocoons can be produced by the silkworm larvae, and before to uh, sell them in the market, the sericulturist has to separate or uh, sort out these cocoons and prepare them for the marketing purpose. So, the cultivation of mulberry and rearing of the silkworms in the rearing house, these are the two steps of the sericulture which are performed in the field by the farmers or the sericulturists. So these two steps are the agricultural part of sericulture. Cultivation of mulberry and silkworm rearing are the agricultural part of the sericulture, and after harvesting and marketing of the cocoons or sale of the cocoon, the industrial part of the sericulture begins. So next point is post-harvest processing of the cocoons. So after collection of the cocoons, after about month of the larval development, where the larvae are grown in the rearing house, after that they secretes the saliva and produce the cocoon around their body within a 3 days. So within 3 to 5 days, these cocoons can be harvested after the complete larval development. So after when the larvae get matured and attains a fifth instar stage, after this stage, the larvae spin cocoons, and the time or the period of spinning of cocoon is only 3 days. So after 3 days of the spinning, the all cocoons could be harvested and separated or sorted for the good or poor quality or bad quality cocoons. These are marketed. So after this, post harvest processing begins. That is the industrial part of the sericulture, and this includes again several steps, that is stippling, sorting, storage, deflossing, and riddling. Stippling means drying of the cocoons. Stippling means drying of the cocoons directly under the sun or directly under sunlight so as to kill the pupa or the stage of life cycle of Bombyx mori present inside of the cocoon, because if we are not drying or killing the pupa inside, the pupa get developed into adult stage, and adult can emerge out by breaking or cutting one end of the cocoon. So this will be a loss of cocoon. So due to this, what happens? The due to cut cocoon or pierced cocoon, we cannot reel the silk thread mechanically or by using machinery or by using machine or motors for the reeling purpose. So it is very essential so as to get it is essential to kill the pupa inside. Due to killing of the pupa inside, the cocoon will remain intact, and we can get a continuous thread of the silk of about 500-meter length, and that is continuous silk thread which can be reeled mechanically by using machinery, and that's why it is very essential step in the uh, post harvest processing, that is stippling or drying the cocoon completely to kill pupa inside. Then next step is sorting. Sorting is again the we can separate the large sized cocoon, medium sized cocoon, small sized cocoon, then cut cocoon, double cocoons, flipsy cocoons, before to reel them or before to unwind the silk thread and reel into raw silk. Then deflossing means removal of undesired flossy mass which is present around the cocoon, called as deflossing. Then riddling means grading. Riddling means grading. That is separation of the large, medium, and the small size cocoons. Then next part is cocoon cooking or boiling. So due to cocoon cooking and boiling, the silk thread could be separated, which has been stuck due to the secretion of gelatinous protein sericin at the time of spinning cocoons. So due to boiling or cooking, the gelatinous protein which is present around the thread, silk thread, that is dissolved, and silk thread gets separated from one another, and that's why it is essential step for the uh, separation or unwinding of the silk thread during reeling. So this will become easy for reeling due to the cocoon cooking. Then reeling equipments, re-reeling, washing and polishing. These are the several steps followed by cocoon cooking. After cooking, the silk thread could be unwound and reeled by using reeling machine in the form of small bundles or bales, skeins. So these are the uh, real silk components in the form of bales, bundles, schemes. So reeling, re-reeling, then washing and polishing. During washing and polishing, undesired gummy knots which are present on the silk thread that could be removed, and the silk is properly washed in acid water and then reeled, re-reeled so as to get good quality raw silk for marketing purpose. Then last point is biotechnological and biomedical application of the silk. Then we are also going to study the composition of silk, uses or importance of the silk with respect to biotechnological and biomedical applications. Then second topic is agricultural pest and their control. So first topic is sericulture, and this includes all these points or sub points in the topic sericulture. Then second topic is agricultural pest and their control. So there are different type of pest. Pest is the organisms. Pest are the organisms and which are destructive and causing loss or damage of the agricultural crops, and thus pest is the term which defines the destructive organisms, harmful organisms which are attacking on the variety of crops and feeding on variety of crops by several ways. There are different ways of feeding of these pest organisms onto the crops and causing loss or damage of the crops. So this chapter uh, includes the study of these pests and their control. So there are different type of pests: insect pest, non-insect pest, or vertebrate and invertebrate pest, which are attacking variety of crops which are cultivated in the field or in the agriculture. There are also the pests which are attacking the different domestic animals and even can cause harm to the human being also. So there are different type of pests such as agricultural pest, then stored grain pest, veterinary pest, structural pest, forestry pest, human health pest. So there are different type of pest which are attacking on the cultivated crops in the agriculture as well as domestic animals, and also uh, attacking on the human being and causing various diseases. So there are different type of pest which we are going to study in the first point, where we are going to study an introduction to agricultural pest, types of pest, agricultural pest, stored grain pest, veterinary pest, etc. Then second point is study of major insect pest of agricultural importance with respect to their marks of identification, life cycle, nature of damage, and the control measures. So there are different type of insect pest which are attacking on the variety of crops and causing loss or damage and reducing the yield of the agricultural production. The first one is Jawar stem borer. So this is the insect pest called as Jawar stem borer, or it is a moth. It is a type of moth, and its larvae are harmful for the jawar crop. So jawar stem borer. Then red cotton bug. This is another insect pest attacking the crop like cotton. Then third one is brinjal fruit borer attacking the brinjal fruit or brinjal crop. Then mango stem borer, which is also a insect pest attacking onto the mango crop. Then next is blister beetle. This is a type of beetle and it is also an insect attacking on variety of crops in a kharif season. Then next is rice weevil. Rice weevil is a stored grain pest. It is a beetle and attacking onto the different type of grains, cereal grains, pulse food grains in the storage as well as in the farm. Then another stored grain pest is a pulse beetle. So this pulse beetle, rice weevil and pulse beetle, these are the stored grain pest attacking on the stored grains in the storage houses or warehouses and causing much of the damage or loss of the stored grains, food grains and the cereal grains. And the last is tick, which is not insect, which is the uh, a tick, which is arachnid belonging to uh, order Acarina, ticks and mites. So these are the acarine arthropods, and these are the veterinary pests attacking the cattle's, oxes, uh, goats, sheep. So these are the different lactating animals and domestic animals. So uh, these are infested by the tick. So ticks, these are the blood feeders and sucking the blood from these domestic animals and causing loss or uh, damage to the anemic, causing loss or loss of blood and causing anemic conditions, or also transmit certain disease causing agents like babesia. So ticks are the veterinary pest and causing health of the animals. Then non-insect pest, rats, crabs, snails, and squirrels. So rats, these are the non rats, crabs, snails, or squirrels. These are the non-insect pest, that is vertebrate and invertebrate pest attacking various crops in the field as well as in the storage. Rats are of uh, more importance than others. So rats are the very dangerous pest attacking the variety of crops like sugar cane, then wheat in the field, and they also cause much of the loss of the stored food grains in the warehouses or in the houses. So rats are very harmful for the uh, agricultural produce and causing much of the loss. Crabs, snails, and the squirrels. Crabs and snails, these are the terrestrial pests. Crabs are also the pest causing much of the loss of the paddy crop or rice fields. Snails are also the uh, foliage feeders, attacking on to the number of herb or the small low-lying crops, also the paddy field, and causing much of the loss of the agricultural crops like rice or different herb type of crops, maybe vegetables also. The squirrels, these are the vertebrate pest and can cause the loss or damage of the mango, coconut like crops. Then next point is pest control practices. So there are different type of pest control practices. Since there are different type of pest, that is insect, non-insect pest, attacking on variety of crops and domestic animals and causing their loss and reducing the yield of the agricultural production. And that's why it is essential to control or to kill these pests so as to protect our agricultural crops. And these methods are cultural control. So these are the agricultural practices like ploughing, weeding, interculture practice, ploughing, then weeding. These are the cultural control practices. Then physical control, where the different environmental factors like temperature, radiations can be used for the control of these pests or to kill these pests. Mechanical control, where we can use number of devices, mechanical devices for killing of the collection and killing of the pest. Chemical control, where we can use different type of toxic chemicals, agrochemicals or the pesticides for the control of these pests. Biological control where we use uh, intentionally the natural enemies of the pest in the field and which can feed upon these pests, and ultimately the pest could be controlled by using the natural enemies of the pest organisms. Then pheromone control, where we can use different type of artificial chemicals which are the mimic or duplicate or the analogs of the natural pheromones of the insects, where we can use the duplicate or analogs or the mimic type of chemicals or the artificial chemicals having similar properties with that of the pheromones. So we can use these artificial chemicals having similar characteristics of the pheromones and can be used for the aggregation of the paste in a particular place from where we can catch them, we can trap them, and then we can kill them. Then auto saddle control. Auto saddle control means self control. Auto saddle control. Uh, the same species uh, in auto saddle control, we can use the technique like sterile male technique. Auto saddle control, where we can use the sterile male technique. We can uh, make the male steriles or male can be sterilized by using certain chemicals called as chemosterilants. So we can use certain chemosterilants and we can also employ the radiation techniques, uh, X-rays, gamma rays. So this is irradiation. So we can use irradiation technique or sterile mill technique for the control of the pest called as artocidal control. And the lastly, the pest control practice, that is IPM. IPM means integrated pest management. Integrated pest management, where we can use uh, almost all or more and more possible control methods at a time. So simultaneously we can use different methods for the control of pest. At a time we can employ various methods. Can be cultural method, physical control method, mechanical, chemical, biological, artocidal. So several possible methods of control can be employed at a time in a IPM, so that we can kill the 100% pest population in the field or in the crop. And last point is plant protection appliances. So plant protection appliances or pesticide appliances, so these are the equipments which are used for the application of the pesticides. So the pesticides are uh, occurring in a different uh, stages or states, that is liquid, solid, or a granule, or the fumes. So pesticides may be powder pesticides, liquid pesticides, or the fumigants, the fumes of which, toxic fumes of which can be formed and that can kill the pest population. So there are different type of pesticides, and for the application of these pesticides we need different type of equipments, and these equipments are shoulder type rotary duster, knapsack sprayer, and the cyanogas pump. So shoulder type rotary duster is used for the application of the powder pesticides like DDT, BHC, and knapsack sprayer is a sprayer which is used for the application of or spraying of liquid pesticides, and cyanogas pump is used for the application of fumigants. So these are the chemicals, the fumes, toxic fumes of which are released from these fumigants and which are directed towards the crops or towards the pest. So for the fumigation purpose we can use the cyanogas pump. So these are the three kind of plant protection appliances or the pesticide appliances, namely shoulder type rotary duster and knapsack sprayer. These are usually used for the dusting and spraying of the powder and liquid pesticides respectively, and cyanogas pump is some other kind of uh, plant protection appliance that can be employed only for the fumigation purpose. So it is difficult to apply fumigants in the field. We can fumigate the warehouses or some horticultural plants or the horticultural crops by using tent fumigation. Tent fumigation. So means we'll have to use these fumigants or the chemicals uh, for killing of the pest in a closed conditions, but that is difficult to use or employ them in a directly in the field. But commonly the farmers used to dusters and sprayers, that is shoulder type rotary duster or knapsack sprayers. These equipments can be used commonly for the application of powder and liquid pesticides. So this is about the syllabus of the zoology paper second, section first, that is applied zoology first. So next time we'll begin with the actual contents of the syllabus, and now we'll stop. Okay, thank you.